Welcome back to Tabletop Assault. I'm Ross and today I'm going to be discussing Necron points. So this was largely requested in our previous video, and at that time we really couldn't discuss them, but now we can as we have an idea of all the points, and that gives us an idea of the usefulness of the units now we can take into consideration with their codex. So with that, let's get discussing some of their points. Starting off with the Silent King, before was 420 points, now remaining 420 points. Still a very big investment, can offer a lot of damage in terms of Minears, but in terms of utility, in terms of auras, there's a lot he can do, but maybe it's not 400 points worth that he can do. In certain situations, if opponent's not prepared, then yeah, I certainly think the Silent King can be worth it, but with our sort of anti-vehicle meta, he may not offer enough to justify quite enough of 400 points, though he does offer a lot. Imatech was 100 points, remaining at 100 points. Not as overshadowed anymore compared to some of the Overlords. Now they do have the free stratagem part, which certainly makes them very valuable, but remember that's only, you can't use that on every single Overlord every single turn. So something to remember on that side, and he is still solid for generating command points. So will we see more Imatech? Debatable. Illuminator Zaras has gone down, started at 185 points, going down to 160. Frankly, I think awesome. I really like Illuminator Zaras. You have to spend a lot of points to get the full utility of Zaras, because you're probably going to need a lot of units around him, battle line ones, to get the full benefits. But he does offer a lot, so yeah, going down in points is a very good direction for him. Drazen needs a rework. Wherever the points might be, didn't really matter, quite frankly. Orc and the Diviner, now started 80 points, remaining 80 points, still very good. If you are going to go for your big Necron warrior blocks, he makes them survive a bit more significantly. So that's really good. Warlord with Translocation Shroud, and didn't have points before, but it's now going to be 85 points. I think it's a very good option, especially if going with Immortals with their Tesla. Regular Overlord was 85 points, now 85 points. Still think that's good value, still has my will be done. So at least having one of these for this free stratagem part is good, but obviously Resorb has had a big impact there. So I wouldn't be surprised if we maybe see a little bit of shifting in points there. Catacomb Command Barge, 150 points, remains at 150 points. I think this is bad. I can see use, but 150 points and is targetable. I just think it's going to get wiped off the board. Does have good invul save, I suppose, but no, I don't see 150 points worth quite there. Scorfic Lord was 100 points, now 100 points, so it's remaining the same. I think this is going to largely depend on Scorfic Destroyers themselves. The lethal hits helps a lot, so his value is kind of tied to theirs. Then we have the Locust Lord, and it was 80 points before, now it remains at 80 points. And I think it's, frankly, the Locust Lord is quite good. It helps both the Locust units get an extra bit of damage in. So I'd argue now possibly a better option for the regular ones, simply for the amount of shots you're putting out. You might get a little bit more use out of there. But I think 80 points, just having that extra boost, is quite significant. Royal Warden remains at 40 points. I think it's a mediocre choice. It's affordable, I think it's going to be largely overshadowed by other leaders. Technomancer was 60 points, remaining at 60 points. Very good, just not as helpful joining Lichguard anymore, but I suppose you can now join on to Wraiths, which is going to be very essential for them. Psychomancer was 50 points, now 55 points. Mediocre, I can see the use of the Battle Shock forcing tests, and you've got the -1 in there as well, so there can be use in there as well, but there are a lot of really good leaders in this book in some cases. Chronomancer, 50 points, remaining at 50 points, very good, affordable, both the abilities are very good, so I think that's excellent. Plasmancer, again remaining at 55 points, I think it's another good choice, not a very good choice, but the damage is good. You know, I personally prefer the survivability compared to the raw damage, but I think a lot of these cryptics are pretty good on that side as well. Catan Shard of the Deceiver, before it was 265 points, remaining at 265 points. Redeployment is fine, it can be very impactful, but frankly I prefer the actual combat impact of a Catan. With that, we've got the Nightbringer remaining at 255 points. Expensive but reliable, and it has better damage now potential, or at least minimum damage. You know, you've got your D6 plus now, so that makes it just that bit more efficient. Catan Shard of the Void Dragon, and it's remaining at 270 points. Very good. It has both sweep and strike. It's very good against vehicles. This current meta is kind of with vehicles, so being able to damage them is great. Transcendent Catan has gone from 300 points to 275 points. I think that's to reflect everyone's kind of now on a par with the Feel No Pain. Now they can't take enhancements anymore, so that's possibly been reflected as well, but it does have the mobility, which is essential. Necron Warriors, big one here, has moved from 110 points / 220 points to 100 to 200 points. That's in bodies of 10 to 20. And I'm going to put mediocre here. There's an argument they could be less points, maybe could go down to 9180. Really don't see them going down to 8160. So yeah, they did need to have their points adjusted going down because their ability has made them a lot less useful. We weren't particularly taking them for their damage prior to them, we're seeing them for survivability. So their usefulness has gone down significantly. Now, I think Necron Warriors are not going to be used nearly as much anymore. I think they were doing quite well beforehand, and now they're going to be probably marked down. You know, I'm putting mediocre, but possibly down as bad now. So we'll never know, but you know, never know quite what's going to be in the future, but could be the case of we might see a further point reduction here as well. Because after all, not damage dealers, they were survivability, and that has been heavily impacted. Mortals were 70 points / 140 points, and they're going to remain that way for 5 to 10 man squads. I actually really like Immortals. They've got better stats overall, you can actually do some damage with them, and their weapons arguably have got a wee bit better, or at least the Tesla got a little bit of extra range. Making Immortals, if you want to actually cause some damage, there's some good buff units to do quite well with them, looking at Luminar's Eras. Hexmark's Destroyers gone from 80 points to 70 points, and downright mediocre now, simply because he's not putting out unbelievable amounts of shots potentially, and I think just damage 1 is really playing a big impact here. Lich Guard, this may be a controversial one. They went from 115 points / 230 points to 85 points and 170 points on a 5 to 10 man. I'm still going to mark that as good, though their efficiency is plummeted, but so is their points to reflect that. You know, that's going from nearly, what, 11.5, you know, was it 23 points a model to 17 points a model? So that is quite a big drop in points, and yeah, the main rule of theirs has actually changed. It was just that we're not going to be able to resurrect them as easily, especially with protection from cryptics being gone and all. Overall, I still think they're good. If you're looking for a bit of an anchor unit, they might do it well, but then again, you might be looking at something different, say vehicles or something. I'm intrigued to hear what people say in this one. Is it now just a bad unit and that the points will never reflect it? I'm really interested to hear what people say. As for their points, I'd probably say they've still got a bit of a purpose. Triad Praetorians, so they were 120 points, 240 points. They're going to remain that for 5 to 10. I'd say they're probably overshadowed by Scorpic Destroyers, so, and even then, Scorpic Destroyers are okay in themselves, but Praetorians just, they don't have survivability, and I don't know if they just quite hit nearly as hard as they need to. Deathmarks were 65 points and 130 points for 5 to 10, and they have stayed the same. I think they're actually a very good unit. One I've not used quite yet, but now that I've sort of looked at them a wee bit, I'm like, this is a potential unit I could use. Blade ones are going to remain at 70 points / 140 points for 5 to 10. I'd say it's a bit mediocre. 14 points seems a little bit much for me for a unit that is not the most survivable, but if they're left out, they can be quite a pain. Crypt Thralls remaining at 60 points, and I think this is bad. Their main use is gone, and I don't think their points reflect that yet. Tombblades have been one that's a bit unusual. They were 80 to 160 points for 3 to 6, now they're up to 75 to 150 points. And their abilities have changed so much that I just don't know how I feel about the unit at the moment yet. I still think there's a lot of utility, they still have mobility and a few options, but I'm just not quite sure there. Scorpic Destroyers, I'm going to put down as mediocre, but I do love them. I just think if you're going to go for something that is quite fast, bit durable, and certain objectives, these guys can do the job. And if there's anything that is other infantry, they can usually shred them quite easily. They just might struggle against things that are like a bit stronger, a bit tougher than 7. You know, if they're facing toughness 8 or higher, they're going to really struggle to actually cause the damage. But overall, I do like Scorpic Destroyers. I want them to do well. Maybe they need a little bit of a point reduction on there. Ophidian Destroyers, I'm going to put as good. Now, they're not there for damage like the Scorpion Destroyers. They're there for their ability to redeploy, which is essential and makes them quite good later in the game. So, again, might be a little bit high, but I do think that as their role, they are quite good. Locust Destroyers are remaining at 30 points each. I think they're actually pretty good. You know, they are very good at clearing out toughness 5 or less of objectives, because you will get those rerolls, which is going to be very handy. Locust Heavy Destroyers, I think, are still solid. I really like them with the Destructor. Just if you have as many buffs as you can on them, they will just do consistent damage. Canoptic Reanimator, oh how the mighty has fallen, from 105 points to 75. And I'd still put this as bad. Huge amount of range reduction, and I just think that reanimating is not going to be as powerful as it was in the past. Now, I think there will be some times at 75 points you will just bring them around, because even bringing back a few wounds on certain models might help, but overall at 75 points I'm not really sold on, unfortunately. Canoptic Scarab Swarms, now they've remained 40 to 80 points from 3 to 6. I think, you know, fine unit. They're fast and they still harass pretty darn well. Canoptic Spiders, they are remaining at 75 points, 150 points for 1 or 2. I think they're good, they're situational, but I think against Psychic armies they're going to be really, really good, because they do give a bit more survivability there. So, yep, I think there is purpose for them. There's going to be certain matchups they're not going to have any worth, but there's going to be ones that are going to be a lot more helpful for your force. And on to probably the new shining star, possibly of the Codex. That's going to be Canoptic Wraiths. They were 110 points, 220 points for 3 to 6 before, and now they are remaining the same. 4 wounds apiece is great. Put a Technomancer, huge survivability. Hopefully just going to become a unit that is a real pain to actually remove. Don't think they'll cause quite as much damage outside the Canoptic Court. I suppose with some of the other ones they might do as well. But yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see where Wraiths go from here. I'm a huge fan of Wraiths. They used to be sort of my go-to unit for Necrons, so delighted to see them back on the playing field. It's going to be absolutely devastating, hopefully. We'll see how that goes. Triarch Stalker, it was 125 points before, it's going to remain the same. Helps other units, but I don't know at that point cost it quite justifies it as much. Canoptic Doomstalker remaining at 135 points. I think it's going to be mediocre, but it is helpful in the Canoptic Detachment, just because you'll get a lot of rerolls hopefully, so that makes it a lot more reliable. Annihilation Barge was 115, staying at 115. I think this one's largely very dependent on the enemy army you're facing. If they're low armour, you'll probably see a lot more use from it. Doomsday Arc I think is good, though quite pricey, and it's gone down in points to 200, but its strength has gone up. I think it contends with Heavy Destroyers, who they can be buffed to quite a large degree and a bit more reliable in certain ways, so that really makes them a bit more difficult on that side to say they're good. Heavy Destroyers come at 50 points each, you can get 4 of them for the price of 1 Doomsday Arc, something to consider there. Ghost Arc is remaining at 125 points. I'm going to say this is bad, mainly because the usefulness along with Necron Warriors seems to have gone down. So overall its usefulness is kind of tied to them, and with their usefulness going down, this one's fundamentally gone down as well. Doom Scythe has gone from 225 to 230, and I think this is really because their ability has become more impactful. You know, if you're going to fire at anything, it used to be I think it just affected infantry, now affects everything, and offers a debuff if it survives, so that's quite good. Night Scythe I'm going to put as bad. It was 145, going to remain at 145. Generally when it comes to the flyers, they're both still really, really expensive, so that makes them a lot less desirable to invest in. Obelisk, I mean 325 still, and still very pricey, just don't think it's doing the damage. Tesseract Vault's gone from 375 to 400. I'm going to put this down as good, but tentatively. You are getting 2 Catan powers, I just wish you could use the same one twice. Some people would say that's ridiculous, how could you do that? It's like a caged star god. Of course it can use the same power twice if needed. If it could do that, then I would probably put this at very good, because it just allows you to then target the ability that you really need in that situation, rather than sometimes having one that you really need and then one you really don't. So just something on that side, maybe I'm being a wee bit picky. Convergence of Dominion, it used to be 255 points for 3, now it's 60 points per model, and I think you can just take 1 now if you want. Going to put it as mediocre. Some people might consider just taking one of them because 60 points is a bit more affordable. Then we have the Monolith, which is remaining at 350 points. Bit of that is good. Certain detachments will find more use than others in this one, and it can certainly use the ability, I think it's stratagem, you can give it a 4-up invul. It'll just make a big block that's hard to kill. I think if you're very clever, you can play this one quite well, but 350 points is a huge investment. On to the enhancements. I'm going to caveat this part here with saying, look, some people might see certain combinations are working amazingly well, moving it into very good, and I might have just missed that. Fair enough. Let me know in the comments on that one. This is just sort of the combinations, seeing the usefulness of abilities. So starting with Awakened Dynasty and Veil of Darkness, 20 points, very good. I've always enjoyed Veil of Darkness, I think it's a great one at 20 points. Very good to have that once per battle redeployment. Netherrealm Casket, 20 points, again very good. Stealth to a whole unit, keeps up survivability. The Phasal Subjugator, again very good. A bit pricey, but you know, that will offer that sort of ability to add 1 to hit rolls in an area, so it can support units that maybe can't have characters in them. And then Enoch Dermal Bond is mediocre, it's cheap, which is good, but I usually prefer unit buffs to personal buffs for characters. Annihilation Legion enhancements next. We've got Eternal Madness for 25 points. I'm going to put this down as bad. It's a bit expensive for a 50% chance that it will work, so I'm not really happy with that. Ingrained Superiority I'm going to put down as mediocre. It is very cheap, but it's only working on crit wounds. If this had been any higher, I'd probably put it as bad. Soulless Reaper, 20 points. It's maybe a wee bit expensive. It's got 2-3 chance that you're going to hold your enemy down and cripple them. Very handy there. Eldritch Nightmare, and I'm going to put this one down as good because again it's affordable. Again, a chance to cause battleshock tests that your opponent will fail, which will help you control objectives and or cause them to have no stratagems, which is very useful. Optic Core enhancements, and we have Dimensional Sanctum for 20 points, very good. You know, plenty of units will have an advantage with Infiltrate, though Race will probably be the prime suspect for that one. Hyperphasic Fulcrum, again, very good. Just a bunch of rerolls there as well. You know, if you're in your Power Matrix and you're already rerolling a whole bunch of hits, add on wounds as well. Going to be a good bit of consistent damage. Auto Divinator, I'm going to put this as good mainly because it's cheap, but I think it could be a little bit cheaper because there'll be some games that'll be useless because your opponent has no way to actually regain command points. So, yeah, it's one of those ones that's reliable only if you can get it from your opponent. Metal Dermal Tesla Weave, again very cheap at 10 points, and it can cause you to reward you for being aggressive, and I quite like that to get some extra mortal wounds. Resian's Phalanx enhancements, we have Honourable Combatant for 10 command points. I think this is quite mediocre, it's cheap but it's just so situational. Then we have Unflinching Will for 20 points. I'm going to put this as very good because you have Precision, which is going to be, you know, situation in itself, but you also get better chance at dev wounds with the anti-infantry 5+. So I think that's quite useful there. Warrior Noble is 15 points, and I think I'll put this one down as affordable. It's -1 tip, sadly only for melee, but it's still a survivability part, so that's quite good. Eternal Conqueror is 25 points, and I'm going to put it as good. It could be cheaper because it's got the caveat of you have to be near objectives. I just imagine if something was offering reroll all hits anyway, it'd be in the region of 35 points. So having that reroll them only near an objective is just that little bit of caveat where, yeah, you do want these guys probably on objectives or contesting for them, but you know, that just puts in the good area rather than in the very good area. And finally, the Hypercrypt Legion enhancements. We have Dimensional Overseer for 10 points. I'm going to say mediocre. I just think it might be useful in smaller games, but in larger ones, I don't know if you'll be certainly picking up more than 4 units. So it really depends on your strategies there. Arisen Tyrant, 25 points. I'm going to say good, but a bit restrictive. You are having to set up on the battlefield that turn. You're obviously planning to in this detachment a wee bit, but it just feels a little bit restrictive there, similar to the previous one, where you needed to be near objective marker. Hyperspatial Transfer Node, and that one is essentially sort of similar to the Overlords that does this same effect. It's still going to be useful for Tesla Immortals, but you might already just take the Overlord that does that anyway to a degree. And then you have Osteoclave Fulcrum for 20 points, and this gives a unit Deep Strike, and I think this is pretty much essential to have in this attachment. And that's it for my thoughts when it comes to Necron points. What I'd say in this one is, it seems to be a large amount of the units are the same as before. Many units being the same as before, though not all of them. And I think we are going to see a big iteration of points changes. This will really be the case of once people start using them in certain attachments and how useful units will be, that's probably going to shift the points later on. Now, I'm very intrigued to see what people say in enhancements. Again, there might be ones that I'm not seeing their full potential. Really interested to hear what people have to say. Put all your thoughts in the comments. Please let me know any units that you go, yep, the points are going to be great, or maybe they're undercosted and need a points increase, or maybe they're too expensive and need a points decrease. Very intrigued to hear what people have to say. Thanks again, and we'll see you on our Tabletop Assault Battle Report.